But I think the common formats of debate used in Uganda are World Schools. So some of you might have come across the World Schools debate format. There's also the British Parliamentary format that is usually used at university level. Or feel free, you can change your chair. You can turn, because I notice you're a little uncomfortable. Yeah, so we have the World School format of debate. We also have, in Uganda commonly used, is a British Parliamentary format of debate at university level. We also have the Karl Popper format of debate that's usually used by secondary school students. I don't know which other one. Yes? I'm not so sure which other one is probably used, but those three are the commonly used ones. Away from Uganda, there is the Ted Turner format of debate, Lincoln Douglas, there's American Parliamentary, there's what? Yes, but there are many. But since we are university students, we'll probably limit our interactions to the format that is most usually used at university tournaments, which is the British Parliamentary format of debate, commonly referred to as BP. Okay. So how many of you have never sat through a BP session? Like you've never sat through a BP session? Put up your hands. How many of you have sat through a BP session but it just confused you? Okay. All right. So the British Parliamentary format of debate, like a lot of the other formats of debate, has two sides. It has the government side and it has the opposition side. It also has what we call benches. So every side has two benches, okay? So you have bench 1 here, and you have bench 2. So when you come to the first benches, on the government side, you have the opening government, and you have the closing government. On the opposition side, you have the opening opposition, and you have the closing opposition. Each of the teams, and now there are 4 teams, I hope you can see. Each of the teams has 2 members, okay? So the opening government has 1 member, 2 members. The closing government has 2 members. The opening opposition has 2 members, and the closing opposition has 2 members. On the opening government team, you have the Prime Minister, and then you have the Deputy Prime Minister. On the closing, you have the member of government, and then you have the government whip. On the opposition, you have the leader of opposition, you have the member of opposition whip. Are we together? Are we together? Yes. Do you have any questions up to this point? Questions? No questions. When the debate opens, the debate is opened by the Prime Minister. Okay? The Prime Minister sets the tone for the debate. If there is a motion, the Prime Minister determines what direction that motion will take. In terms of parameters that Garang and Edgar talked about a lot in the last conversation, The Prime Minister is usually the person who sets parameters. The Prime Minister is tasked with presenting a debatable case for everyone in that room. The Prime Minister is tasked with presenting a case for the government bench. Okay? The Prime Minister probably has the most liberties on what they can present. Also, I think the Prime Minister and his deputy are the only people who really know what they are preparing for in this debate. The rest of you appear for war. Okay? But the Prime Minister and his deputy actually prepare for the debates. The Deputy Prime Minister has the duty of continuing to support the Prime Minister's case. He also has the duty of rebuilding the case of the opening government. The Deputy Prime Minister also has the duty of refutation in regard to what the leader of opposition stated. Okay? So what happens is that the Prime Minister will speak, and after the Prime Minister speaks, the leader of opposition shall come and speak. The duties of the leader of opposition are basically the duties of refutation that Edgar and Garang talked about in our first segment of the debate. Are we together? Yes. So the leader of opposition determines how we are going to refute. The leader of opposition provides a counter policy if their bench chooses to provide one. The leader of opposition provides the major areas. At times they can begin to provide the major areas of clash, if any, especially for the opposition bench, and say, okay, this one we shall not address, but this is what the debate is about. Okay? And the deputy leader of opposition continues to refute and rebuild this. Are we together? When it comes to the closing benches, that's the closing government position. Members, the member of government and the member of opposition, one, build the cases that were presented by the opening government. Their job is quite heavy. Just a moment.
Just requesting for pardon about the roles of the deputies.
The deputies. Let's continue, finish, and come back. Okay? Yeah. So the members of government have quite a heavy job. So I also understand people who don't like being members. It's heavy. So the members of government have heavy duties. One is to continue to defend the cases of the opening halves of their sides. Okay? But they have a more important role that distinguishes them from the deputies in the debates, either the deputy leader of opposition or the deputy prime minister. That unique role is called the role of extending the debate. Closing halves of the debate, are expected to provide what we call extension of the debates. Okay? Now, extensions can take different forms. Extensions could be an added explanation or idea around something that was already presented by the upper halves. Extensions could be new angles to what the upper halves provided. So for example, if the upper halves were talking, if we were the debate on killing rats, and the upper half was talking about nuclear, and they did not maybe go into benefits of nuclear issues, maybe because their debate was solely around the issues of cost. An extension could be around looking at the overall benefits that would accrue to whoever is part of society if they decided to pursue the policy that the government provided. What is the difference between claims and arguments. So when we talk about arguments, arguments could easily mean one of two things. The first one is that argument which is as if a quarrel. You come and you be there arguing, quarreling, complaining. That is one definition of an argument. The second definition of an argument is that it's a logical explanation to something that you are discussing. So to have an argument, when we say what is your argument must be logical. Okay? For it to be logical, it has components of support. Okay? So usually when we start teaching argumentation, we say that an argument has three parts. Okay? An argument has three parts. The first part, which is C, is the claim. The R is the reason or support. And the E is the evidence. When you practice debate more, this is tilted a little bit and we go into conversations around premise. Okay, what's the premise of what you're talking about? But let's start here. Now, a claim is an unsubstantiated statement. You could be there and you say, I am tall. Okay, no, maybe I'm not tall. I am rich. Say that you're handsome is a claim. Say that you're tall is a claim. Saying you're short is a claim. Saying you're dark is a claim. It's unsubstantiated. Okay? And so usually when you come into debates, at times we throw around statements which are unsubstantiated. Those are not arguments, they are claims. For your claim to have weight, it needs the backing of reasoning or support. So Jen is rich because she recently withdrew 10 million shillings from her account. Okay? So now you will be saying, wow, 10 million, maybe Jen is actually rich. Okay? But if you want to strengthen this submission, you could go ahead and give evidence. Jen is rich because she recently withdrew 10 million shillings from her account. I was the teller in the bank that worked on her as she withdrew this money. So I saw her and it's me who gave it to her. Or I saw that withdrawal slip in her handbag. You get? So when you have a submission like that, it weighs more than if you just said Jane is rich. Are we together? That's the difference between a claim and an argument. So when we talk about case development, when we say what is your case, a case is a collection of arguments. Are we together? And that is why you cannot talk for 2 minutes if you're building things like this. If you're just making claims, you can speak for 2 minutes and make 20 claims. But if you're building arguments that have claims, that have support statements, that have evidence to them, the chances are that you will use up all your time. Also, when it comes to modern debate, especially BP, it's not in the quantity of your arguments. It's in the quality of your arguments. You can win a debate with 2 arguments if they are strong. What makes an argument strong is the weight of the support and evidence. So one claim can have multiple pieces of support to it. Are we together? So when you begin to refute, you can also refute the components of support within the reasoning of the claim. Are we together? So at times when you read a little bit more on debate, when people say that you're questioning the premise, at times the premise is within, the reasoning that is provided for you to be able to make a conclusion on an issue. Are we together? Are we together? Yeah. Now there are some of you have said dozing, but we are together. Okay. So because that motion is an adage, and because it's an adage, it's not cast in stone, I would really discourage you from pursuing a definitional challenge. You get it? Some of the, okay, so let me go back to your question. How do you decide whether it's a definitional challenge? If it is something that is statistical or it's a realism, then you can pursue a definitional challenge. If, for example, someone says that a girl is someone with a penis, you can pursue that on a definitional, on a definitional basis, because a girl doesn't have a penis. If someone comes and is probably saying that that water, okay, that maybe we are having, no, let's not go. That my favorite motion on water. But if you're having a motion on water, and someone comes and says that water is a tree, that's problematic. You get it? But if you have a motion where you're allowed to think, I think pursue the issues, the arguments therein, and do not pursue a definitional challenge, because he's free to take that in any direction that he wants to take it, as long as it makes sense. Let's go a little bit out of debate, okay? And let's go into our normal lives, okay? One of the things that I tell every debater is that you must read. Let me tell you, the information out there is so vast. For me, you cannot come here and tell me that you went into a room and the Prime Minister was so amazing you had no response. It says more about you than about the Prime Minister. Are we together? Especially if you're in opposition. There is a lot to say. You get it? So even as a debater, beyond trainings like this and beyond tournaments that occur once in a while, normalize extending your knowledge bases. Also, normalize having conversations with people who stretch your mind. So who do you talk to on a daily? Because, yeah, it either pushes you to think or just makes you comfortable with your knowledge bases. When we had just started, when we started to grow the debate movement, I remember I think every week we would just sit down in one house. And I remember I would be in with Karamaji, Andrew, Karamaji has always thought like that. For forever, he has been thinking like that. He comes and he gives you things and you say, but where did that come from? Yeah, so you'd sit with Karamaji. There was a lady called Irene Ikomu. She's now off the radar, but we would sit and push our brains. Because one, to be able to be successful in a BP debate is to be able to think off your feet. Otherwise, you might even fail to offer a POI. And people will be saying, but that bench was very quiet. So I refuse the notion that a team can be so excellent you cannot respond to it. I refuse that notion. And I say, go and broaden your knowledge bases. One of the reasons that we get overwhelmed in debates and believe that we may not have opportunity to respond is because we don't practice a certain very important skill for any debater, and that's taking notes. Are we together? In debate, it's called flowing. Okay? There are times that you're in a debate and you say, hey, do you have notes? Where's your flow sheet? And they say, no, I wasn't taking notes. Of course, if you aren't taking notes, you're not going to remember anything and you're not going to be able to respond. When you take notes, by the way, when you begin to write people's things, you begin to realize how they did not make arguments. You begin to realize the lies beyond the English. When you put them on paper, the realities hit you in the face. You're like, banange. This person sounds so good, but they haven't said anything. So how we usually flow, and people have different ways in which they flow. But my mode of flowing is that I always carry my A4 paper. Okay? And I have Prime Minister here. I have Leader of Opposition. I have Deputy Prime Minister. I have Deputy Leader of Opposition. And so on and so forth. Okay? When the Prime Minister comes and he starts, I listen. Now the thing with flowing is that you're not a rapporteur. You're not writing a report. You're looking for the issues. So the Prime Minister will come and say definition. How did they define? They contextualized. What was their context? What were some of the statistics? Then they moved on to their policy plan. This was it. And then they went and gave me their arguments. It was argument 1, argument 2, argument 3, and this is what they said. Okay? Now, if you're the Deputy Prime Minister and you have such a superb Prime Minister, by the time they speak, you're like, oh Lord, what am I going to say? But you have been flowing their speech. Okay? And so you're looking at what the Leader of Opposition is going to be submitting on. Now, if you're Leader of Opposition and you had the Prime Minister's speech laid out, when you go and respond, it's easy for you to say, okay, this I agree, so I won't bother. Context, I agree, but maybe we will challenge this statistic. It's not 8%. Our response is that it's more at 20%. You get it? On the policy, yeah, we will counter. And what's our counter? Our counter is that if they wanted to use nuclear, we're going to use sticks. Okay? And they say that nuclear is quick. Nuclear is new age. And nuclear is what? The rats won't smell with nuclear. Okay? So you'll come in and you'll be like, okay, we are going to counter nuclear, but since our burden is a burden of refutation, before we counter this business of quick, now, yes, we agree it's quick, but no, if you decide to factor in importation, it's not quick. If you're bringing it from China, it is going to take us like a month for this thing to get to Uganda, yet we have sticks available out here. So it's not quick. Okay? And it's not quick because, so this is now a very long process because suddenly China is into the question. You say that it is new age. Yes, it's new age, but how are you going to deal with this? And here is the thing. You are again thinking, you think while the person speaks. So you're like, new age. Okay, yeah, it's new age. Now, yeah, what's that? Data penetration in Uganda. Data penetration in Uganda is low. Technological advancement in Uganda is low. We even have, we don't have protection policies by government. So really, new age can't work because we are a Stone Age country. They said it will not smell. But not smell how? Rats are rats. All of them smell when they are dead. You get? This is my response. Are we together? Now, I had proposed sticks. Will I have time for the arguments on sticks? Probably not, but let me highlight them. 1, 2, 3. Deputy Leader of Opposition. These are my 3. I may not explain them, but I'm going to announce them. You'll come and build on them. What are arguments for sticks? They are available. They are tried and tested. They were even used by our ancestors and they work. They are cheap. This is our response. Are we together? When the Deputy Prime Minister comes in, you don't have to deal with this. This is already handled. Okay? Say 8 versus 20. No. Ubos says 8. We don't know where your 20 is from. We maintain our 8. You talked about it not being quick. Parliament can approve and expedite importation. Okay? So if Parliament expedites, these things will be here in 2 days. We will waive customs. Okay? So it's still quick. You said that data, what, new age? Apana. We recently increased funding for the Ministry of ICT. As a government, we are committed to new age. Are we together? We even went for the Dubai Expo and brought a robot back. You know, we are committed. On the rats not smelling, we shall just keep quiet about that. On sticks, you said they are available. Ladies and gentlemen, the opposition is not alive to the realities of climate change. This is deforestation. On tried and tested, yes, there are very many other things which are tried and tested. For example, seat belts, they failed. We've also tried and tested as a country. NADS, it failed. So we also have a lot of evidence of things which have been tried and tested and they have failed. So this doesn't work. On it being cheap, long term it's expensive because of global warming. Are we together? Now, Deputy Leader of Opposition, you have seen how this debate has been going. Definition, no, we agreed on that. On context, I think let us just abandon this project. We shall not say anything on it because we don't have our things to back our 20%, so we shall keep quiet. But we will come back on Parliament expediting. We'll say Parliament expediting. Parliament is on recess. Parliament is on recess, or Parliament has a very long policy agenda. Rats are really the list of their issues. Okay? On the Ministry of ICT, the Deputy Leader of Opposition will say, we have a lot of government policy, e.g. 1, 2, 3, which have been approved and not been implemented. On the issue of climate change, now what are we going to do about climate change? We will encourage communities to plant trees. And it goes on and on. By the time the whip speakers come in, you will realize that there is a concept of what we call dropped arguments. The argument on smell wasn't carried on by any of them. The arguments that were carried on were the issue of quick and new age, maybe, depending on how this debate continues. Now, this, if you did this and you were thinking off your feet, you would be able to respond. Are we together? So, floor your debates and be attentive. Yeah. Questions? Questions? No questions. If you really want to prepare, you could preempt what your opening house might say. But again, if you're an opposition whip, it's hard to preempt how your opening house will respond. But maybe you can attempt to preempt what the Prime Minister might say. Are we together? So at the end of the day, the skill of critical thinking is important in debate. When you look at critical thinking, it's to say, what are your listening skills like? British Parliamentary tests your listening skills. It tests your thinking skills. It tests your ability to think on your feet. It also tests your wit. Because unlike other debates, in BP, we have a fine balance between matter and manner. Okay? So there's almost a 50-50 between spread out between the content that you deliver and the style in which you deliver it. So in BP, we also don't like very serious, boring people. Okay? We like people who are witty about how they are presenting things. So to answer your question, you really can't preempt this thing. You work on the job as the closing half of the house. It's on job work. So if I'm an adjudicator, I'm looking at the arguments that carried on through the entire debate. Usually when arguments are dropped, unless the Prime Minister comes back and maybe unless the Deputy Prime Minister comes or the member of government comes back and says, we even raised the issue of statistics, you brought us wrong statistics, we raised it again, you didn't say anything. When it comes and they report you like that, it might become an issue of contention. But if the other side doesn't raise it again, it is dropped and not considered. We carry and weigh the debate based on the arguments that carried through to the last speech.